Today, we're going to tackle what a bridge job is. We throw the term around a lot in the career development space, but not everybody has any idea what we're talking about, and how to land one, how it can help you navigate your way to the career that you really want, especially if you are navigating a big transition from one industry to the next in particular. We're going to review what to look for in a bridge job and how to manage the psychology that goes along with this process, primarily talking about patience and impatience and the important role that they both will play in your career transition. So first, let's take a step back and acknowledge why we're here today. Career transition, it takes some time, but it also takes guts. Being the kind of person who is willing to say, I'm grateful for what I have, or maybe I'm frustrated with what I don't have, but you know what? I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to take the initiative in my life and my career and become a little bit more tolerant of the risks involved to pursue this kind of a change in my life. So maybe you're here because you want to make a big career shift, but you're just not sure how to get started. Or perhaps you've realized this industry ain't for me. I'm in the wrong place. I don't belong here, but I'm not sure what is right for me. Maybe you've got a lack of clarity on that front, which is totally okay and totally normal. It's part of the process. Or maybe you're just a frustrated change maker, like I kind of am most of the time. And you're like, okay, I got to make a change. Enough's enough. This is not working. But like most of us, you don't want to bet the farm. You don't want to risk it all. You don't want to just throw caution to the wind, because not all of us have the privilege of having a mom and dad's couch to crash on while we're figuring it out. You know, maybe you've got little ones on your crash who are on your couch rather, who are counting on you to figure it out. So feel free to add to that, Carol. But in the meantime, I'm also going to launch a poll because I want to hear from everyone here today. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to tell us what is currently slowing down your career change. What is currently providing challenge to you? Select any and all that apply from this list. And I'll share the results in a moment too.
Yeah, I'm super curious to hear the results before I jump into
Sure.
I have some suspicions, but I'm curious to see.
All right, 5 more seconds, y'all. We got a bunch of you who voted. Oh, it's single option? Oh, sorry about that. That was my B. Bummer. I meant to make it. So in this case, pick which is the biggest obstacle.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, what is the biggest obstacle that's in your way? All right, I'll give you an extra second because of that tricky part there. Okay, here we go. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So what we're seeing here is really interesting.
Not what I would have guessed.
Not what I would have guessed either. What's the most surprising to you, Carol?
I would have thought fear would be a bigger one for people. Yeah, I think I obviously I made an assumption that as women, often that's what holds us back, because I think a lot of times we're taught to kind of stay in our station and toe the line. But I love that that's not it for so many of you. So yay, that's a huge win right there. Good for all of you.
I love it. If you're here today, you're being proactive. You've got guts. You're ready to go. The question is, how do you go efficiently and effectively? It sounds like a lot of the women here are saying, I'm ready to make some moves. I'm ready to take some risks, but I want to make sure that those risks are calculated and that I'm headed in a direction that will be right for me. And I would almost push back and say, what we're going to talk about today is how to make sure that, how to proceed, not having to know that the direction you're headed in is perfect, but to know that the direction you're headed in will teach you something about where you want to end up. So, the lack of experience is a huge barrier when you're trying to leave the law and go into teaching, or to go from an industry that you've been in, like political strategy, into starting your own company. It feels like there's this magical mystery box of knowledge that somebody else has that you don't have. Mm-hmm. And so if you're in that boat, let us know. Feel free to elaborate on your answer in the chat bar so we can see, so Carol and I can see where you're coming from. That's exactly what we're going to tackle today.
If it helps at all, I have a degree in hospitality and I work in HR now.
Right.
So it's possible. You can do anything.
Totally. I love that. It's a really good point. We're going to talk about people who have done just that, because I think lack of experience is also sometimes fear in, like, I think Elizabeth Gilbert would call it fear in nice shoes. It's like, I'm not perfect for this industry yet. So that's a form of fear making you feel less than. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into this to figure out how we can break through that lack of direction and the lack of experience in particular. That was really helpful. Thank you for taking part in that poll. Okay, so, interesting chats coming in here, but I will continue to talk through the slides. But the good news is, when we talk about how a bridge job can help, a bridge job can help in so many ways in softening that transition, in smoothing that transition, in sort of providing an on-ramp to your next stage of your career. What's beautiful about this is that it might be the kind of job that allows you to try on an industry for size, to see if your directional sort of compass is in fact pointing you in the right way. It provides a little bit of feedback, a little bit of data to let you know, do I really want to be a teacher? Or do I really want to try nursing? You know, all of those questions that you're struggling with in terms of a lack of direction, a bridge job can help you experiment with it. It also might just keep the bills paid. It might keep your lights on. It might afford you more flexibility that your current job does in order to experiment with different potential future careers that you're trying on for size. Or, and this might be the case for a lot of folks who want to make a career change, but for whom time and money are barriers, it might help take you out of a workplace that is draining you in any number of ways, to afford you the energy and resources you need to devote to your career transition itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You know, one of the things I was going to mention just from an employer point of view. So at FlexJobs, for our internal team, we have a lot of people who will come in. You know, we have a lot of employees, but we also hire a lot of contractors. And one of my sort of bittersweet moments is when I get resignation letters, of course, particularly from contractors. And I say bittersweet because they often read like love letters almost. They're like the best breakups that I've ever had in my life. Because they'll say, you know, I came here because I was feeling, you know, really at a crossroads in my life and in my career. And I came here because I kind of needed to heal and I needed to find some new direction. And yeah, I knew this wasn't, you know, going to be my final place of, you know, for the rest of my life necessarily, but I needed something to get me through while I took some classes or did some training or got some experience somewhere or did some volunteering or did XYZ to get to that next place. And I really appreciate the culture and the flexibility and the space that you gave me to heal and to be able to make that next move. So I tell you that because as an employer, like I'm happy to be able to give that gift to somebody. And, you know, so there are these jobs out there that will give you that. Yeah. And that will allow you that space. So yeah.
Awesome. And I think, first of all, I have to say that there is so much happening in the chat bar right now, which is
I know. I'm like trying to read and talk.
It's actually going to be impossible for us to keep up. But what's happening is you're chatting with one another, which is part of the reason why joining these webinars live can be so valuable. Mm-hmm. So thank you everybody for weighing in and responding to one another's comments. It's really beautiful what's happening in there. But what's interesting from the employer perspective you just gave, Carol, is that a lot of these folks are saying, I don't know how the hell to get an employer to allow me to try on a career for size. So we're going to address that in terms of how to communicate your career transition in a little further detail further on. But it also basically warrants its own conversation. So definitely check out our websites for more on interview tips, because the way you interview for a bridge job shouldn't sound that much different than you would interview for a regular job. What's different is your perspective on it. And so we're going to dive deeper into that. But this is definitely not focused on how to convince someone to hire you just to try your career on for size. They don't need to know. That's the basis of it. None of their business. And we're gonna elaborate on that in a moment. So I'm like loving this chat though. Y'all are in the right place. So let's break this down with a borrowed metaphor from the design world. So I saw a couple of you want to get into tech, into product design. This is for you. If you have never heard of the iterative design process before, you're not alone. But it's a really good framework to bring to career transition, because this is how every product has ever been perfected. And I'm not holding up my iPhone because I think it's perfect per se. And also, yes, that's my dog and my handsome man. But I'm holding up my iPhone because this iPhone, I think it's a 7 or 8, is so much better than the first iPhone that came out. And the reason this is so much better than the first iPhone that came out is because of this iterative cycle of continuous improvement and testing and prototyping that any good product has gone through. I want you to think of your career in the same way. So a lot of us are probably here today because we might be in the design phase. We might be thinking, all right, how am I going to plan my next move? What is going to be my next step? The next stage is prototyping. How can I give it a try? Build my minimally viable product, right? Try on that job for size. Land a job that will tell me if this career field is really for me. Or land a volunteer opportunity, or contract a single project that will allow me to try my hand at event planning or at product design to see if I like it and to see how I do and to see what I learn. And that brings me to the last stage, which is adjust or evaluate. What was working about that prototyping process? What didn't work about that prototyping process? And to not think of it as what am I good at, what am I terrible at, but to think of it as what am I already pretty solid with, and what do I need to learn to move forward in honing my craft? And then boom, you got to get right back into the design phase. So now you're redesigning your next move, prototyping your second stage, evaluating what needs to change and what needs to be replicated to be successful. And I would argue that the goal here isn't to find the perfect career for you. The goal is actually, when taking a bridge job in particular, to collect more data about what is going to work for you long term. So my second poll here for you is to think about, sorry, I've been sharing that for way too long. My second question for you here is to think about what stage in the iterative process would you say you're in right now? There are no right or wrong answers here, but are you planning your next move? Have you made a move but you're not 100% satisfied? Are you evaluating your most recent move to figure out what worked and what didn't and how to move forward?
While they're doing that, I just noticed that last comment. And
Yeah.
I hate to tell a potential employer that I'm willing to commit long term just to get the job line isn't ethical, and I 100% agree with you. And thank you, as somebody who hires people, please don't lie. I'm never suggesting that. But there are jobs out there, like I hire people all the time, and I don't necessarily expect them to stay forever. So if that's something that you're looking for, there are jobs out there that are designed actually to be short-term gigs. There are jobs out there that when we hire people, we know by the very nature of the work that they're probably not going to stay more than 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. So you can be looking for those types of opportunities as well. You don't have to think of every job as this lifetime commitment or until you're ready to retire. And for a lot of us, so I'm a little bit older, and a lot of us grew up in sort of this mindset that when we take a job, we take it and we stay forever. And really the workforce and the landscape of work has changed in that that's not necessarily the case anymore.
Right.
That it is more accepted and acceptable to the point where when we write job descriptions, we'll actually say, even for employee roles, like this particular one, we're looking for somebody to stay long term. And I'll talk about that in the interview. Like for this particular role, I'm looking for somebody who wants to stay and put down some roots, versus some of the other jobs. I might not talk about that in the interview process because I know this is something that's going to kind of churn and burn. So
that's a great point. And I hope all employers would be that transparent, but I think part of
probably not.
But one of the ways,
something to keep in the back of your mind, that we know that as people who are hiring, we know that people are not staying
totally
more.
And another way that I think about it is, in the world of consulting, people often say, do you want it done well? Do you want it done fast? Or do you want it done cheap? Pick your priority. And I apply that to interviewing in terms of, do you want to make your current boss happy? Do you want to make your potential future boss happy? Or do you want to make you happy? Pick one. Because there are times when you need to get your bills paid, so you need to get this job, and you're going to say whatever you need to say to get this job. I'm not saying you should lie, but I am saying you're putting your needs first. Then there are times when you're saying, I'm going to take this job with something in mind that I need to improve for my next job or for my next boss. Or it's like when you're taking an interview in the middle of the workday, oh my gosh, you're feeling really bad about how you're not currently giving 110% to your current boss. And that could be really guilt-inducing. But what you're doing is you're choosing your prospective next boss over your current boss right in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an okay calculation that we need to be more tolerant of making for ourselves, which is, it is okay to decide to put your needs first on occasion, or to even decide, like, I remember when I had a job on the table, a job offer to be a state director for a statewide organization in Rhode Island working on environmental issues. It was an awesome job opportunity. And I had just verbally accepted it, not signed anything, but I had just verbally accepted it when I got another job opportunity that would pay more, allow me to live in Washington, D.C., which I really, really wanted to do. And that would allow me to get deeper into the digital world of political organizing online. And I said to my friend at the time, oh my God, what am I going to do? I just got my dream job offer and I'd already accepted this other offer. And she said to me, it sounds like you know what you need to do. And I called them up and I said, you're not going to be happy with me. I'm so sorry to be doing this. I didn't see it coming. I have to rescind my acceptance of this application. And it didn't feel good. I knew I was making them unhappy. They were unhappy, understandably so. But I put my future first there for a moment. And I'm not saying, like, let's all go around jerking hiring managers around, but sometimes you have to make those tough calls. And I don't regret it for a second. So I just had to get on my soapbox there for a minute, because we women put other people's priorities way too often ahead of our own. And how much better would the world be if we were all putting ourselves first? Not always, but not never.
Yes.
So a lot of you are here, as I suspected, because you're in the design process. You're starting to plot your next move, and that's a really great place to be. If you're in the prototyping or evaluation stage, this is a really excellent time to start to take stock. What is working for you? What variables need to change? And in fact, Carol's going to speak to that in just a couple slides when specifically thinking about what flex looks like for you. I hope this is a helpful metaphor, though, in terms of guiding our process forward. To give some color to that metaphor, I want to walk through two case studies. One is my friend Dominique Broadway, who is an amazing personal finance coach you should definitely check out if you want to get your money right with Dominique. At 25 years old, she knew she couldn't stay as a Wall Street trader for much longer. She was doing very well. She was helping clients with net worth of at least $1 million become even wealthier and really manage their wealth assets. But despite all the good pay and despite the flexibility she had and the fact that her boss at the time had said, I want to groom you to take over the firm someday, she knew that wasn't what made her happy. And she knew that she couldn't do this for the long term. So wanting more ownership over her own destiny, wanting to try some work that was much more creative, she quit her job and started a cupcake business. And this was when cupcakes were just becoming a big thing. So this was like just before Georgetown cupcake. She was on the edge of the cupcake curve, okay? Big business. And she failed. And she talks very frankly about this failure because she realized, you know, if you're going to start your own business, you really have to care. You have to care a lot. You have to be willing to think all day about what you're doing. And she did not care that much about cupcakes. She's more of a cupcake consumer than a cupcake entrepreneur. And what she realized through that prototyping, because that was her going from planning to prototyping, was that she really liked managing her own business's finances. She really liked the creative challenge that was entrepreneurship, but cupcakes had to go. So she kind of swung back. If you think of the pendulum of change, she kind of swung back to the middle, somewhere between being a Wall Street trader and a cupcake like connoisseur. She started her personal finance business, which is called Finances Demystified. And that is where she found a lot of success. That is where she felt like her values aligned. The ability to work one-on-one with individuals was there. The creative challenge was there. The financials and her talents when it came to managing money came in super handy. And that's where she's really built her career over the past decade. One more example of a bridge job being part of this iterative process. That second from the right there, that little brunette up-and-comer is me when I was in 2008. I'm fresh out of college. The only job I could find in the midst of the Great Recession at the time was an internship with my dream political strategy agency, Blue State Digital. So I was very much a tiny little guppy in a very big pond. I loved living in DC and I loved the agency, but I didn't really love the role I was in because being an intern who just changed hyperlinks for our clients on occasion was boring me to tears. So over the course of my 3-month internship, thank God it was paid. That's the only reason I could take it. Even though it paid my rent, I realized very quickly, even if my role was different here, being in an agency at 21 was not right for me. So that was the bridge job. During that summer, I learned a lot about myself, but I also took that 3-month period to meet and network with as many people as possible. And it was at a conference that I'd really gotten to because of the connections I'd been making. I had talked my way into a conference by being willing to sign people in and be a conference volunteer in the morning. And I met somebody who was in charge of organizing for America at the time, which was the grassroots army that kind of turned the Obama campaign into the Obama administration in terms of a grassroots operation. And that's when I landed an interview for the job that would transform the rest of my career and nailed it. If I do say so myself, because I really prepared for that interview. And it was like I was skipping out on my internship to sneak home for my extended lunch break to make sure I was as prepared as possible for this interview. So little 21-year-old Emilie, went from intern to state director. And not only was that a title bump that is very hard to replicate, but I had also become the youngest state director in the nation because I made it my mission to get that job. Thankfully, my internship paid the bills. It was somewhat related to the field I wanted to be in, and it got me in the right place at the right time. For that, I'm so grateful. I could not have landed that major job as state director, which I then stayed in for 2.5 years. I could not have landed that job without the bridge job that was my internship, even though the internship was not the best for me personally. So I want people to really think about how a bridge job can actually put you in the right place at the right time.
So I want to talk about what you should be looking for when you're thinking about what that bridge job is going to be. So it does not have to necessarily be directly in the career that you're looking to transition into. So it can be anything from It can be super simple, relatively speaking, right? So you can be a barista, you can be a bartender, you can, when I did FlexJobs, I did everything from taking, HR-based contracts. I started doing I leaned out in the fall of 2001. It was actually right after 9/11. It was sort of this perfect storm of personal and world events that kind of led me to this big epiphany that I needed to make a change. And so there were actually a lot of companies who were looking for people to build emergency plans for their companies. And I had a couple of contacts, and that led to a few different contracts, which led to a few more contracts. So that's how I kind of got started with it. And so I would go in and write emergency plans of what to do if something was going terribly wrong, right? So was that necessarily what I wanted to be doing? No, but it was meeting my needs at the time, which was getting me out of a toxic environment, giving me some space. It was paying the bills mostly, but I was in a position, my husband was making enough money that I could take a little bit of a pay cut. And it was giving me the flexibility that I needed to work on other things that I needed to work on to figure out where I was going from there. So it doesn't have to be, like I said, directly related or directly in where you want to go, because sometimes you don't know that answer yet. You have a general direction, or maybe you don't, right? And you need to work on some things to figure out what that's going to look like. I took a lot of jobs that I thought like, oh, well, maybe this is what I want to do when I grow up as a woman in my 30s. And then I got into it and was like, no, it's actually not at all what I want to be doing. So sometimes it's trying on, a new pair of shoes and realizing they don't fit at all. But looking for things that again, sort of give you the opportunity to try some different things on, to learn some skills that can be transferable. So I think I saw earlier somebody talking about people in HR and in hiring that don't see those skills that you have that can relate to other positions. And you're right, because some of us who do this kind of work are not very good at connecting those dots. And even those of us who are, and I'll pat myself on the shoulder and say, like, I'm actually really good at that. But I will also tell you that in not complaining, not trying to whine, like, I look through a lot of applications every time I'm hiring for another position. And so sometimes it's hard to take the time to sit and really connect those dots for people, right? So, thanks, Jen. So you might have to connect those dots for us, right? So when you take a job that is maybe going to get you some skills that you think can apply to where you want to go, you're going to need to connect those dots and show us how those skills in teaching are actually going to apply to this skill in product management and why, right? Yeah. So connect those dots for us. But look for those bridge jobs that are going to help give you those transferable skills that'll get you from point A to point B.
I love it.
And so when you're thinking about what that bridge job is going to be, what's on this slide here is really important. Think about what's urgent versus what's important. So is your urgency that you need to pay the rent? Well, then that's going to drive what that bridge job is going to look like. And understand, it may be more than one bridge job that you're looking at. So the first one may be to pay the rent and maybe get a little bit of a nest egg built up, right? And so that may be the one that's like really not what you want to be doing. So that was it for me, right? I took these contracts building these emergency plans, and I could charge kind of a stupid amount of money because people were willing to pay it at the time. Not that I was trying to take advantage of the situation, but that was the market was willing to pay it. And so I made my money and I put it away. And then I was able to really kind of like coast for a bit and try some really like fluffy things that really didn't pay much of anything, and do some volunteering and, like try on things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So you've got to think about what is your urgent need right now, and work with that when you consider what is the bridge job that you need right now.
I love that. And we've got a couple of related questions that have come up while you were speaking that I want to put to discussion as well. One of them was from Christine, who said, should you ever take a full-time bridge job that doesn't cover rent? And I think that speaks directly to this urgent versus important situation, because for me, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Carol, I babysat when I was starting my business, even though babysitting didn't cover the rent, but it helped me eat away at my savings less. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on what is urgent versus important for you. At the time, I wasn't maximizing my income. I could have maximized my income by staying on as a digital political strategist, but I really wanted time. That's what I needed at the time. To start my business, to get really creative, to take risks, it needed time. So I prioritized flexible work that allowed me to spend as much time as possible working on my business, as opposed to the kind of work that would maximize my profit generation.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. You're looking at the urgency versus the importance, and you had the privilege of making that decision, right? And there are going to be times, and there are going to be situations where some people don't have that, right? Like there's not an option. You can't not make the rent because there isn't enough savings, or there isn't an opportunity to do that, or like you were talking earlier, you have kids that you're taking care of, or things like that. So if that's an option, and there is a priority that is greater than covering the rent that's personal to you, then yes, do it. Go for it. Right. If you are in a situation where you can make that leap of faith in yourself, because here's the thing, there are very few people who are going to take that leap of faith for you.
Right.
If anyone. Like if you're not going to make it in yourself, who's going to make it for you?
Right.
So if you can, and that is your priority, that is your urgency, 100% do it.
Yeah. And I love this question that's coming in from a few folks here who are talking more about money, which I would direct you to all of the amazing financial advisors that we have in the Bossed Up Network too. So stay tuned for more webinars with them. But when thinking about this kind of a calculated risk, you've got to get clear on what your budget is. Like, what do you need to bring home every month to keep the lights on? I took a job in Portland, Oregon that paid a lot of money, but required me to literally leave my life behind in DC for just 3 months because I knew it was temporary. I knew I could save money. And part of what was included in the deal was they were putting me up in a condo while I was doing work there, which is crazy awesome and very lucky, and helped me when my leap of faith, as you called it, Carol, turned into a leap into being broke in 3 months. So like, I'm not going to say just take this leap of faith, it'll always work out. I was broke. Yeah. So I basically had spent all of my savings, learned a lot, and now needed to replenish the cash flow. So I sublet my apartment, took this job for 3 months. It was extremely hard. It was extremely unpleasant, but it was extremely supportive of my life at the time, and I don't regret that either. So I think when it comes to really managing the money piece of this, you got to talk to a financial advisor to know your bottom line, know what you need to bring in. And I wouldn't look past those bartending jobs or the babysitting gigs if those are an option for you, because some of them pay extremely well, but what you're doing is that's not a resume line, right? That's not going to promote your career transition per se, right, unless you want to go into mixology or caretaking. So you have to really weigh what is most urgent versus what is most important to you, and make those decisions accordingly. We're going to talk more about how to convince someone to hire you in a minute, but I want to just sort of put that aside for a second because we're talking about the strategy, not the communications of how to do so. So I think interviewing tactics on this are a whole different webinar.
Yeah. We could spend a lot of time just on that. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool.
For sure. So when we're talking about how do you find this job now, and particularly a flexible job, because that's really a big part of this bridge job, right, is there has to be some sort of flexibility to it. And for these purposes, typically when I talk about flexibility in work, I'm talking about like, you get to work from home, or it's part-time, or it's flexible schedule. For today's purposes, like there may be other types of flexibility. It's giving you some financial freedom or that sort of thing. But for this moment right now, I really am going to focus more on true work flex. So now that you hopefully have a little bit of direction in terms of what is most important to you, right? You've identified what your urgency is, in terms of what kind of a job you're going to look for your bridge job. So the next thing you need to do is you need to identify what do you need most in terms of the type of flexibility in your work. So is it that you need to be working from home? Do you need to be working part-time? Do you need that flexible schedule or an alternative schedule? Do you need a contract job that's going to kind of provide you with sort of ultimate flexibility? But it comes with its own set of things for you to consider from a financial standpoint, in that you're a business, you're your own business. So you have to take care of your own taxes. Your employer is not paying into your employment taxes. There's not benefits involved with that, things of that nature. If you're not working, you're not making money. There's no paid time off, those sorts of things. So in addition to doing the work, you're constantly having to develop this pipeline of clients coming in as well. So there's a lot of benefits to working as a contractor or a freelancer, but there are other considerations that go along with that as well. So you have to determine what kind of flexibility is it that you need most in order to be able to go through that design process, right? And to be able to prototype what you're looking for. Once you know that, then you want to start focusing on the industry and the company, and or the company. So where are you most likely to find something that's going to meet those needs? Because a lot of times when we're looking at these bridge jobs, like we don't necessarily know what it looks like. It's not like we decide to make this big transition and we say, I know what I want to do in the meantime. Like we're really feeling pretty loose, and we could go a number of different directions. So now that you've sort of got a little bit of direction in terms of what your needs are, where are you most likely to find that? So again, maybe it's looking at a particular industry that's going to get you some of the skills or some of the experience that is going to help get you to that next step or that next phase. Maybe it's a company that has a really great reputation, either for providing the needs that you have or a great reputation in the direction that you want to move into. Maybe it's somewhere where you're not necessarily moving into the specific job that you want to be in or the career path that you want to be in. Maybe it's a foot in the door, right? Maybe there's somebody that you really admire professionally that can mentor you. And you can kind of work your way in that way a little bit. So get real creative and think outside the box, like where can you get what you need that'll help move you to that next level? And then like literally, where do you find these jobs? FlexJobs. Sure. That's where you find these jobs. So if you're not familiar with FlexJobs already, we are a subscription-based service. It's a very low subscription fee. But what you can do on our site is you can you can set up multiple profiles. There's actually no limit to the number of profiles. So it's perfect for jobs like this, like when you're in this kind of a situation where maybe you don't know exactly what you're looking for, because you can set up multiple profiles that are looking at a variety of different industries, a variety of different skill sets, a variety of different keywords. And And then you can also save searches based on skills and keywords. And then what our site is going to do is we're going to send you emails. When our site sees jobs that come in that may be a fit for those profiles or those searches that you've saved, we'll send you emails to say, hey, we noticed that these jobs came in that might be of interest to you. You should probably take a look at these, right? The other really cool thing you can do is once you've searched by, say, keyword or skill set, you can then also filter that by location, or you can filter by type of flexibility. So once you have, again, defined some of these needs, you can go in and you can start really narrowing down your search to look and see what you have available to you that might be a good fit for what you're looking for.
Awesome, Carol. And do you also have work that comes up on there can be done from anywhere, that's remote?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
That's another thing for folks to think about, right? Mm-hmm. They're looking at that. Awesome.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome. We've got a question specific to FlexJobs here from Kelly, who's a member. She's been a member since last September. Is there a tip you would suggest for getting more responses from prospective?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. That is a great question and a frustrating experience to have. And I wish that I could help with that more. It's something that we do write about on our blog. So I do recommend that you go there and just do a quick search for, like, I think it's literally like why you're not hearing back. Because there are some suggestions, some tips that may help a little bit. But just being completely honest with you, like, some employers just don't have very good manners. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. They don't do a very good job of following up with people. But there may be some small tweaks that you can do in your cover letter, in your resume, in what you're presenting that will get you, get you some better communication and get you some interviews and things like that. So I would take a look at our blog for some recommendations there, particularly when it comes to that remote space. And especially if it's bigger companies that tend to use ATS systems, keywords are such a big thing. Make sure you're personalizing your cover letters, resumes. I don't want to go too far down this road because I know that's not what we're here to talk about. But then, also, check with our client services team because they can take a look at your profile and give you some good advice too.
Awesome. Thank you. And on a related note, for anybody who's having trouble hearing back from employers through any applications that you're submitting, there's research that came out, it was covered in the New York Times just after the Great Recession, when the economy was really starting to recover and we started seeing lots of applicants and lots of job openings. And that's really what's happening right now. So there's a lot of applications flying around. I think it was something like 80% of people who get hired have an internal referral. So I would highly recommend anybody who's looking to get their foot in a door, who maybe you've already applied to a great job and you're pretty obsessed with it and you really want it to happen, combine your application with a stalking strategy on LinkedIn. Get your butt to LinkedIn and find somebody who knows somebody who works at that organization. Take them out to coffee if you can. Hop on the phone with them if you can. Have those informational interviews to say, hey, here's why I'm awesome. I'd love to hear more about your career path. You seem awesome. Can you put in a good word for me? I've already submitted an application. Can you put my resume to the top of the pile? However you can make friends within the organization that you're trying to get into. Any way you can do that is going to help increase the odds of hearing back from that employer. So,
for sure.
Something to consider.
And if I could just clarify something, I want to be clear, like, for FlexJobs, like, we're not a placement service or a headhunter or anything like that. We're simply, what we do is we vet the jobs to make sure that they are legitimate, that they are professional level. There's no scams, no commission only, no business opportunities. We provide a convenience and a safe, easy place for you to find the jobs that have that element of flexibility to them. So somebody was asking, like, what's our success rate and things like that with like pairing or matching people with jobs. We don't actually do that part for you. We're simply going to present you with those jobs to make that research part of it easier for you. But then you're on your own to actually determine which jobs are the right fit for you and to apply and go through that process on your own. So
awesome.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And we're almost towards the end of our prepared slides today, so we'll even have lots of time to take your questions. So hold on to those questions. We're almost there. We've got one more process conundrum here that I really want you to consider when looking for a bridge job and considering that iterative cycle that you might be in right now, is the balance between practicing patience and impatience. So first, before I explain my philosophy on this, which is something I'm thinking a lot about these days because it came up a lot in my book manuscript that I just polished off, where's my poll? Is a question about where you lean intuitively. So when it comes to patience or impatience, which are you most challenged by? Are you challenged by patience like me? Do you tend to give up or quit on something too soon and then regret it? Or are you challenged by impatience? You tend to stay too long, or, and this was cut off, so I'll explain it, get stuck in planning mode and never get to execution mode. And it's okay to not be sure either. But if you had to pick, which one of these do you struggle with most? Give you a couple more seconds to weigh in. Oh my goodness, this is fascinating. You're gonna love this, Carol. All right, here we go, and I'm gonna end it. So if you haven't voted yet, vote now. Oh my God, people are switching their votes back and forth.
I'm impatient.
I know, right? All right, here we go. So it's almost 50-50 split, although there's a healthy number of people who are not sure. I would encourage you to look back on your work history and really try to figure out which of these you lean on the most. It looks like 36% of us struggle with patience. We give up too soon. We quit too soon. We might not stick through a challenging trouble spot in a career path to learn through that struggle. If that's your case, listen to Tuesday's podcast with Maxie McCoy that I released called Sitting Through Struggle. You and I have a lot in common, and I think that episode will help provide some tactics for you if you're not already a bossed up podcast listener. And then for the majority of you, or the largest minority, I should say, 42% of you struggle with impatience. You tend to stay too long. You're not impatient enough. You don't get out of planning mode and get into doing mode. And that is good information for you to know about yourself. So if you are not sure, I really push you to lean on some self-reflection time. Look back at your work history. Think about, have you left or stayed too long? Have you left too soon or stayed too long in the past? And allow that self-knowledge to guide your next steps. If you struggle with, being too patient, keep in mind that a little bit of impatience is a good thing. It's not, we're not here to be perfectly patient women on this planet. Like that, even though that is a very gendered value that women and girls are taught to be patient and rewarded for being patient, I'm here to say that might not be serving us all that well, because being impatient with the status quo is what urges us to act. It gets us out of planning mode and into experimentation mode. It's also what starts revolutions, right? So being willing to start your own personal revolution by saying, I can and will be impatient with this status quo. I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to start today by making an action plan. Own that. Lean into that discomfort. Explore that part of yourself psychologically, spiritually, or in a community like this one. So we are here to help you fuel that revolution in a calculated way. And finally, for those of you like me who tend to lean on impatience, let's remember that there is stuff to be learned through patience as well, especially when it comes to that iterative cycle, right? If we prototype and then quit a job every 2 months, if we're constantly prototyping, we might not be around long enough to learn everything we can learn. So having patience with those experiments, with your bridge jobs, and a willingness, not to mention, to stick with something that might be uncomfortable and learn from it, but also a willingness to really hold out for your best possible next job is key. So don't give up on yourself, right? Don't feel like if it's not happening overnight, it's not going to happen. That is a lie. The whole myth of the overnight success is a really damaging myth that we can all push back on. And I just want to make sure that everyone here who falls into either one of these categories also sees your skill set as variable, as growth oriented. And that just because you struggle with impatience now doesn't mean you can't change that. So really honing this through reflection and allowing yourself to not just go through the cycle, but to go through that iterative cycle with reflection time. And really, if you have to write it down, write it down. If you have to talk it out with somebody, talk it out with somebody. But this community is here for you as an accountability group to help you see this through, because as someone who has navigated career shifts from industry to industry and seen countless, tens of thousands of other women do the same through Bossed Up, I can tell you that it's worth it. It's worth the challenge. It's worth the roadblocks. It's worth the moments where you're feeling like you're losing faith in yourself, to stick with it and to be bold, but to also take care of your basic needs along the way. So that's my spiel on impatience and patience, but I'm curious to see what's happening in the chat here. So Christine's saying a lot of folks struggle to decide about taking a less than ideal job. If they take it, they might get stuck in it, but if they don't take it, they might not get something better in the future. Girl, this is just like marriage, okay? I am a week and a half away from walking down the aisle, and let me tell you, A, nobody's perfect, right? No job is perfect, just like no partner is perfect. And B, commitment is scary. I think commitment to a job or commitment in the dating pool is scary. So it's almost like the same psychology applies here. Holding out for what is perfect for you might baffle people around you for whom it is not perfect. So figuring out what job's baggage matches your baggage, or what person's baggage matches your baggage. And for me, it was always a compromise of, all right, what are the drawbacks here? Can I live with this for the rest of my life? And guess what? In the job world, it's way less high stakes, if I might say so.
Separation is a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a leap of faith, like you said earlier, Carol, but I'd be curious to hear your take on this too.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. I agree. And, I don't know. I've always been one, I don't change jobs easily, but in that I don't jump from job to job. I've never been that kind of person. Like, I always go into every job with the intention of, this is my job and I plan to stay here. Unless it's designed to not be that way. It's designed to be a short-term contract, of course. But but at the same time, this job that I have now, I've been here for 6.5 years. This is by far the longest I've ever been anywhere. I think before this, it was maybe 3 years that I had spent at any one place. And it just, it's for a variety of different reasons, but I think you just know when it's not right anymore. Right. And it was always for it was always for something different, whether it was just the growth wasn't there, the opportunity wasn't there, the fit was no longer right. I've had everything happen from being let go, the company being bought out, realizing that, I was in a situation where, just there's no integrity left in the company anymore, and I couldn't look myself in the mirror anymore to be a part of it. There's all kinds of reasons, but all of those reasons and all of those experiences helped shape and helped me understand what was important to me and what I needed from a job. And even that time off when I leaned out and took all of these bridge jobs and sort of explored and found myself and tried out some different things, all of those processes helped me understand like what it was that I really needed. Not necessarily the job that I wanted,
right?
Because I actually ended up going back to what I was doing, like as work. But it made it clear to me that it was about the people that I was doing it with, and that it was about a mission that a company had, that it needed to be for a greater good, and those sorts of things. So that's what was important.
I love it. And you're speaking directly to this question that came in here about being willing to come to those inflection points. So Carol was describing a few different ways that sometimes an inflection point in your career finds you and you're like, I can no longer tolerate the status quo. It's not an option. I just got laid off, or the company got bought out. There is no status quo. It's gone. And sometimes you bring yourself to those inflection points. Yeah. But an inflection point is a point of no return. Something has changed. And the narrative structure of storytelling, this is the hero's choice moment. Right? Mm-hmm. And the world has changed in a way that you can no longer stand idly by and do nothing. And there are times in our lives when we feel that way. Mm-hmm. And when you feel that calling, one of the challenges here is going from hearing the call to actually doing something about it. So we have a question here saying, my struggle is that I feel like the design phase is taking way too long. How do I get out of planning and into prototyping or into acting? And I'd be curious, Carol, to hear what you have to say on this for sure. And one of my easiest pieces of advice is to download the free tool we have at Bossed Up called the Bossed Up Life Tracker. If anyone here has it or has used it in the past, drop us a comment to tell us about it. But bossedup.org/life tracker will get you a free downloadable ebook with this proprietary tool we developed with my board of advisors, one of whom got her PhD in gender and decision making from Yale. And it's become the basis of our planner too, which we're putting our 2018 planners out for sale very soon for pre-orders. But essentially it helps you take micro steps towards your goal every month and every day of every month. And it's really about breaking it down, lofty ideal, to micro movements or boss moves in micro bites. That's going to help you start experimenting, start prototyping, even if it feels like a small prototyping phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really, that's your specialty is how to move from designing to acting, planning to acting. So I leave that on your doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty obsessed with that topic, so we can definitely talk more about it in Q&A. I want to, before we officially go into Q&A, and Deirdre here has an awesome piece of advice here on talking on LinkedIn. I just want to make sure you know that we are here for you well beyond this webinar. This is the beginning of a very thorough conversation that Carol and I could have all day, every day.
Yeah.
But Carol, tell us about the deal you're hooking up our amazing listeners today.
Yes, I wrote it all down because I don't do numbers, I do people. It's like writing down all of it. So we are offering a promo code for listeners, and if you're listening to the recording later, Jen, maybe you can help me out. I'm not sure how long the promo will go, but if you could type that in, that would be super helpful, and I'll say it out loud. But if you use the code BOSSEDUP, all caps, you get up to 30% off of your membership. We have 3 different membership options. So there is a monthly one, and so with the discount, the monthly membership will cost you $9.95. The quarterly membership with the discount will cost you $23.95, and the annual membership with the discount will cost you $44.95. So super, super affordable. It's a pretty nominal fee to get access to over 30,000 jobs, all of which have some element of flexibility to them, and they've been hand screened and vetted by our awesome research and jobs team. So
beautiful. Thank you, Carol. That's so awesome. And on top of that, also, one of the best ways that we here at Bossed Up really cater to folks who are navigating career transition is our weekend-long training program that started my entire company. back in 2013. In July of 2013, we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. We launched Bossed Up with Bossed Up Bootcamp, which is our weekend-long training program for women who are at that inflection point that I described a moment earlier. But we don't just help you find the job. We help you craft the boss life that you are really striving towards. So if you're still struggling with a lack of clarity or want to know how to take your plan and make it into a real actionable, tangible next step sort of plan with a courage community that's going to help you every step along the way, you can find all the details about this program. It really is the best thing I do, and we keep it as affordable as we can. But right now, if you register, you can actually make it even more affordable for yourself by saving 20% off with the code BRIDGE at checkout. Our next one's coming up in September in DC, and then in November in Los Angeles. And then earlier this week, I added 3 more upcoming dates for DC, New York, and Chicago for 2019. We'll be announcing even more for 2019 soon, but stay tuned. That really is the best program I run, and that code is only good for 24 hours, so definitely hop on that. And it looks like Jen here, also on the FlexJobs team, wants to clarify that the Bossed Up code will stay live until the end of August, so get in on that FlexJobs deal. And we'll also be emailing you all afterwards to remind you of these wonderful opportunities and to invite you into the Bossed Up Courage community on Facebook, which has in fact been called the best place on Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's where women help each other and share resources in crafting that boss life. So we've got time for a few more questions. Mm-hmm. And one of them I first want to start with is a comment really from Deirdre, who said, earlier Emilie mentioned LinkedIn stalking. I applied for a job in marketing at my alma mater. I emailed my favorite professor who still works there during this webinar, asking if he'd get in touch with HR on my behalf to put in a good word. Yay! Talk about going from planning to doing. In 5 minutes, he emailed back saying absolutely and asking for the job posting to curate something for me. Fingers crossed, and I am so excited to hear that, Deirdre. What a boss move.
That's awesome. Good for you.
So great. So what other micro steps can you take following this webinar right now? I want to hear about it in the chat bar. What is one thing you're going to do differently or additionally next so that you can move forward in navigating this career transition for you? And on top of that, feel free to chime in with any further questions that you have for us. Otherwise, Carol, is there anything else that you wanted to add? Or
I mean, there's a million things we could talk about. We could literally probably go for 24 hours straight, but you have a wedding to...
I know. I do have to finish my wedding planning process and all that jazz. Look at this. So Stacy's starting doing instead of planning. Swetta's signing up for FlexJobs. Yay. Says, I'd like to take on career opportunities even when I don't feel ready. What a commitment. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm committed to continuing to serve you in this community. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the Bossed Up podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Twice a week, we've got conversations like this one in your earbuds. Or I like to say, bossing up your earbuds. And there's so many free resources that are coming your way if you haven't been a part of the Bossed Up community already. I want to welcome you with open arms. And Carol, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. I loved being a part of it.
Awesome. Well, definitely take advantage of FlexJobs' generous offer here / opportunity here for you. And we'll keep in touch. Until next time, keep awesome. And I will talk to you all as a married woman. Probably next.
Congratulations and good luck.
Yeah, I'm off. I got to get out of here. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.